Welcome back to the Missed Apex Formula E podcast. I am your host, Chris Stevens, and today we are looking into how Jaguar created a world championship winning team since returning to global motorsport in 2016. And to do that, there was really only one person for the job. Please welcome to the show, Jaguar TCS Racing team principal, James Barclay. James, welcome.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, excellent. And when we say building a team from scratch, you really did build it from scratch, because normally when we talk about new teams entering the sport in any series, 9 times out of 10 they're taking over an existing entity. Like McLaren, for example, when they came into Formula E, they basically just bought into what Mercedes left behind, kind of same with their IndyCar program. But Jaguar had not been involved in motorsport for over 10 years. So you really had to build something from scratch there.
Yeah, that's right. And it's nice to every now and then reflect on the journey we've been on. And it has been, I would say a once in a lifetime experience, really. As you say, it's very rare to build something from scratch, particularly build something from scratch, but with an iconic brand that has an amazing history in the sport, right? So it's kind of has two great opportunities. You have a chance with an incredible group of people to go on that journey together, but also do it with the responsibility of wanting to write a new chapter for this incredible company. So yeah, you're right. It was over 12 years since Jaguar was in Formula One, and even the Formula One program was really a branding exercise of what was Stuart Racing at the time. So when I joined JLR back in 2013, with that objective, it was far from kind of agreed or approved at that point in time. It was a case of find the right reason, not any reason. And yeah, to think that from that perspective, it was a case of, right, where is the motorsport kind of function? And there was no one. There was not a single person with the motorsport title. There was no motorsport department. And but that was what the appeal was, from my side, is if we could find the right program, the right category, then we could build something from scratch. And it's wonderful working in motorsport when you come into a successful team, but it's something even more when you can be part of the fabric of that team along with everyone else that's made it possible.
I think people don't realize that you yourself were kind of thrust into motorsport from a very early age, growing up in Kyle Army.
Yeah.
And then when you came to the UK, you even raced as well. So can you give us a quick summary of your motorsport career before joining Jaguar?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. I grew up in a wonderful part of the world in South Africa. I left when I was 15, but grew up in Kyle Army, right next to that incredible racetrack. Hearing the sound of sports car races, and my first Formula One race is 1992, and that was, that is still hard imprinted in my memory. So really fortunate to be able to enjoy that era of racing as a youngster. And I moved to UK in 1995 with a clear goal before I even came that I wanted to try and be involved and ideally drive. And I remember watching and reading the Jim Russell scholarship books, and I was adamant I wanted to come and spend my a couple of years at Donington, try to learn to race cars with Jim Russell Racing. That was kind of at the time what all young drivers did from all around the world. They'd come to that school, and I came to the UK. I couldn't quite afford to do that at the time, but I was really fortunate that where I went to school, there was some kids that were into go-karting there, and immediately I got involved. And I did the National Schools Karting Championship, which was a great start, go-karting, building our own karts, and not just buying equipment, we were actually building our own equipment then, which was really exciting, building chassis, resurrecting old engines, and I absolutely loved that. And from that point, I was absolutely hooked. But I was really keen to want to continue on that ladder, and I looked at doing karting at a higher level, and it was just so expensive to do. And at that time, there were quite a few scholarship programs, and there was one scholarship program which was Vauxhall, and that was to find young drivers for the British Touring Car Championship. And it's actually run by Tim Sugden and Mike Nicholson, the then head of Vauxhall Motorsport. And so I'd done a bit of karting. I'd done quite well in the National Schools Championship, and I went into that, and I was really fortunate. I just missed out on the overall prize, but there was not a prize for the best newcomer. But Mike was really pleased and really impressed that I'd I'd come from very little background, up against some very good people like Alan Morrison, who just won the single mate Ford Fiesta Championship, and many others. I think Colin Turkinson might have even been involved that year, but some great people involved. And so, yeah, Mike took me under his wing and helped me with some budget to go racing. And that was then 99, my first year of racing. And I raced in the Vauxhall Vectra Sport Championship to the BDCC. And I was sort of a junior driver with Vauxhall, already on the outskirts of that program. Unfortunately, Vauxhall pulled out of motorsport at the end of that year. So my timing wasn't perfect, though. But it gave me, at that point, I would say, so much of a taste, and I was fully committed at that point. My life was going to be dedicated to racing, and I was really fortunate. Even though I had a year with Vauxhall before they had to stop their race programs, they introduced me to Lotus, and I was one of then 3 team members to recreate what was Lotus Motorsport, and we created the Auto Vitel Lotus Elise series, which supported again the BTCC. My job was to hire drivers and to do some test driving and to do some racing if I could find the funding, and that was great. I did a part year in 2000 with that, and the drive was then really strong. I was involved commercially, having kind of set that series up, but also be part of that setting that series up, but also racing. And I was still studying at the time, actually. So I was overlapping everything. My family home was in Cheshire. I was living in Norfolk, commuting there every weekend, which was big miles. So it was a really exciting time, and I really, when I went back to finish my degree, so I was in there for a placement year with Lotus, and then extended to 2.5, maybe 3 years. Finished my degree, and I tried to go full-time racing at that point, and I was desperate to race in British F3, but unfortunately I couldn't find the money. Like a lot of young drivers, I just couldn't find the money to keep going. And at that point, I was offered an incredible job, and that incredible job was to go and join Bentley to support them from a PR perspective with the Le Mans project. And I thought, that opportunity probably won't come along very often. I can try and throw everything at being a racing driver, but will I be good enough? And the honest perspective was, I thought I was good and decent, but I didn't think I was probably at the right level. And so I took the decision to drive a desk. And listen, it was an amazing journey. Won Le Mans with Bentley. We were fourth in 2002, and we were first and second in 2003. That iconic year for Bentley, and being part of that program was the first major milestone in my working career. And that was the start of it. And then I went on to commercial jobs with Bentley outside of motorsport, because as everyone knows, Bentley stopped its Le Mans program then. But I was part of the GT3 business case to bring the Continental GT into GT3 at Bentley at the time. And then an old boss of mine, Adrian Hallmark, who's now the CEO at Aston Martin, the former CEO of Bentley, and he was at JLR at the time. Adrian said, I know you are focused on motorsport, and he was CMO of Jaguar at that time. He said, I want you to come join Jaguar and bring us back to racing if you're up for it. And so that is the start of the journey, to say I either stay in an incredible career within Volkswagen Group, or I am part of building this incredible rebirth of Jaguar in racing. And the first racing car I ever sat in was a Jaguar D-Type. So at that point, it pulled my heartstring, and I said, that's the job for me, and the rest is history.
So I didn't realize when you joined Jaguar, it was to bring them back to racing.
Yeah.
So how long had they been thinking about that, and when did Formula E first become that option?
So yeah, really good question. So that was why I came. Adrian said, obviously, you've got to convince the board. That's what I'd like to do, but you've got to convince the board.
Oh, so it wasn't sold? Yeah,
no,
it
wasn't
just
sold.
A couple of people fancied it, and they had to go and convince the big bosses.
Yeah, and the opportunity was, and quite frankly, at that point, to head a motorsport program up with a major OEM, you normally go and find someone who's done it at that level before. But Adrian knew that how much I wanted it, and also, would you go from a top tier motorsport job to try and make that happen? Probably not. So it would take someone like me who was willing to take that risk. And yeah, so I had another job when I started, but the night time was filled with looking at the business cases, and straight away, we got stuck into what could be the right reason for Jaguar to return, and we looked at everything. We looked at sports car racing. If you probably remember, there was a thing called the convergence discussions around bringing GT3 and GTE together in sports car racing at the time, but that fell apart, unfortunately, and then didn't make sense to have to build 2 different cars. It was very expensive to do. We looked at whether we should go into top tier prototype sports car racing, Formula One, very quickly, but way too expensive. And then on our development and R&D map for JLR and for Jaguar was, of course, our first electric car, the Jaguar I-Pace. And so with that car on the horizon, and then all of a sudden this startup Formula, so in 2014, Formula E was created. And I was actually at the opening, or the launch event for Formula E with Alejandro Gag at Donington. And I sat quietly in the back and I said, really interesting, you know, this has got a long way to go, but let's see how it goes. And so watched that first year of Formula E in 2014, and our product strategy started to become a bit clearer. And now what is now the beginning, what is now a reimagined strategy for JLR, which is to, includes Jaguar becoming an all-electric modern luxury car company from showroom for the first time end of last year was starting to emerge. And then you had lots of happening in industry. You had climate change discussions around when the ban on ICE engine production would be. And so all of a sudden, it became a really, really interesting and viable option. And Jaguar, if you look at its history, when it's done its best, it hasn't followed, it's led. And this is an opportunity for Jaguar to lead. And now we talk about New Jaguar being a copy of nothing, which is an original line that Sir William Lyons used. And actually at the time, that's exactly what we were looking at. Let's not be a copy, let's lead rather than follow our competition. So yeah, we took the kind of decision that actually this was the route to go. And Adrian Hallmark had actually then left JLR, unfortunately, to go into his role with Bentley. And so that was then an interesting time. So I thought, well, will the support be there? But an amazing guy called Gert Moiser came in, the ex-CMO of Porsche. He joined JLR as CMO. And Gerd was part of previous race programs at Porsche. He'd been a key part. And I sat down with Gerd and went through our options and we discussed Formula E, and we both agreed that was the way to go, and he fully supported it. And we took that to the board, and then at the time, our CEO, Ralph Speth, he agreed that was the right way to go, and that was it. And the rest is history. And so, yeah, that was literally the background. And it took us longer than we wanted, because at the time, Formula E actually had only 10 teams, 10 franchises available, and there were no franchises available. They were all taken up. So we were on the sidelines waiting, and it came very close. We nearly couldn't come into Formula E because we originally tried to buy one team, something came up there, we couldn't. Then something else, a team was for sale, then it wasn't. And then, yeah, we were literally on our last roll of the dice, to be really honest with you. And but the Trudy team at the time, they had a franchise. They had some trouble, though, from the technology front. It was the first year of the open technology on the manufacturer perimeter. And unfortunately for them, it didn't work out. And the franchise went back to Formula E, and we were first in line, so to speak. And that's where the journey started. We announced it in the Shard in London in December 2015.
It must have been like trying to wait for that opportunity. And no one ever wishes a competitor ill, but when Trulli couldn't even make it out of the garage during preseason testing, you all sat there like, "Ooh, this could be it."
Honestly, we couldn't quite be that confident, but we kind of we hoped, because from my perspective, you can imagine, I was absolutely raring to go with the team. We were starting to form if it happened. And a great technical partner at the time in Williams Advanced Engineering, who were part of what our whole business case would look like. So we were all really raring to go. Many of us have been flying around the world trying to negotiate to get a franchise. So yeah, we were hopeful, but you can never know. And it was just, for our point, the timing. Fortunately, it worked out. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sat here today.
So was it decided straight away that you were going to be leading the project and leading the team?
Yeah, fortunately, it was. That's from a JLR perspective. Yeah, I'd head the program up. I think that luckily for me, Adrian obviously had given me that opportunity, and Gerd had given me that opportunity as well. That was clear from the outset. So yes, it was. It was clear, but I had a great team around me, a great technical partner in Williams Advanced Engineering who were involved, and yes, we kind of had to all of a sudden hit the ground running. And that's what's interesting. We announced in December, as I mentioned, but we had to crash test in April our car.
Oh, okay.
So there wasn't a lot of time to think. It was, we've got to do, right? We've got to get going. We've got to get our powertrain designed and developed, and we've got to get the car crash tested, and we've got to go racing. So very quickly it shifted into to work.
Did you feel ready to become a team boss, a team leader? Because you were in Was it partnerships as well at
Yeah,
Jaguar?
so my role was head of global sponsorships and brand partnerships, yeah, for JLR. But like I said, most of my background had been in motorsport, and that was a really interesting time for me because I actually got to be involved in many other sports. So in terms of being ready for a team principal, actually, it was the perfect, I would say, couple of years to learn. I was working with the likes of Team Sky with cycling, with Jaguar, we're a partner working and experiencing the likes of Sodeo Brailsford, Ben Ainsley with what was Lander at BAR, the Emeritus Cup team, which we partnered with, tennis with Wimbledon, rugby with the with the Rugby World Cup. Yeah, it was an incredible opportunity. I worked on the Bond film, Spectre, which is incredibly cool experience. Learned a lot. So
Yeah.
actually, to be honest, it was a fantastic. My motorsport background was there since I've been a kid, right? But to then understand around buying rights as a sponsor, which I was heavily involved with all of those negotiations from America's Cup, Team Sky, Rugby World Cup, all the equestrian games, I can go on, right? So I was all of a sudden then into a real area of expertise about rights negotiations and sponsorship, which as a rights holder now, as a racing team, that's invaluable. So in some ways, actually, it made me probably better for the job, if I'm honest. And having been around racing for so long, you'd seen and I'd witnessed great team managers, great team principals from either the cockpit or from the sidelines. And yeah, it was. I don't think you can ever say you're perfectly ready. You just have to get stuck in.
Yeah. Go outside the comfort zone a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. I got to say, I do think sometimes I can sort of see the commercial experience coming in because, so as an example, as a former journalist and then somebody who went into PR and communications, there is one term that I hate more than any other, and that is, oh, we had a technical problem on the car. And you are probably the team boss I've heard it use the least. You seem quite sort of upfront, and it's nice because you sort of just not come clean, so to speak, but you're very honest and open with the media, and you explain things as well, sort of unprompted as well. So I guess that is that commercial experience coming through.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think for me, it's always been something which has been really important. Just being really transparent, really open. You tie yourself in knots if you make it too complicated, right? And the reality of the situation is, fans and to the team, if we've done something well, we'll be the first to say we've done that well. If we've got something wrong, we'll be the first to say we've got to do our homework and we have to work on it. So, transparency has always been key. Of course, there's things sometimes you've got to protect your team in ways as well. But yeah, it's always been something we pride ourselves on the team here that we can be always really open. So I think that's the best way to be. Whether it's talking to fans or to partners and sponsors, that level of trust is not just within the team; it's with fans and it's with your partners as well that make the whole team possible in the first place. So yeah, it's not been easy at times, and there's many interviews where I can particularly remember places like Berlin when we lost the championship on the last race and the last day, and I thought I can just put a kind of veneer on this, but I thought, what, that's probably the easiest thing to do is just say how gutted we were, right? And we opened up and we showed the emotion of the team. I think that's always the best way.
Oh, I think we need to stop trying to dehumanize athletes and sports people. Really,
Correct.
emotion is what we're all here for, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's sport. It's about passion. At the end of the day, that's what sport is.
Absolutely. So you've got the team approved. You've got a big deadline looming, and at this point, do you have any sort of semblance of a race team? Like, where do you even start building a race team from?
Yeah. No, it's honestly, when I go back to that first year, it's literally put me in hospital at one point because you just don't stop working, right? There's just not enough hours in the day. But it
Wait, did
was
it actually?
yeah, no, literally, genuinely, I
Oh
got blood
God!
poisoning. I don't know how, but I actually, after the Donington test in our first year, the first preseason test, I actually drove myself to A&E because literally I hadn't stopped working, and the team around me, they were just incredible. I mean, firstly, you can't hire enough people quickly, so what you rely on is great people around you. What I'm really proud of is that a lot of that core team are still here today, who were literally with me on that journey, and where now they head up a whole department in the team. Then they were doing everything from sponsorships to the team kit to the travel for the team, literally every aspect, every single contract that we had to do, creating the contracts in the first place. We literally started with 3 commercial people, including myself, and our technical partner with Williams Advanced Engineering, 2 people, and we built the team up from there. And so actually 3 people in Williams Advanced Engineering, I should say. So there was 6 of us in total really to kick the project off properly, and then it just expanded rapidly. And then you've got to hire people. I think the biggest thing from our perspective is also one thing I would say, which we just knew from the start, is we couldn't stand and promise everything. And we made the point, we will firstly get to the start line and we will compete. How high and how well we will compete, I tell you now, unless you're up for supporting us, we will not be at the top. And we have to, as a group, have time to learn and develop. And we were really well supported by our company. JLR and our board at the time were fantastic in giving us that space. And that's what was really important. If there's been the expectation that we come out and win, it would have been a very difficult process. But we were really kind of clear on that, and we had that support to say, let us learn in year one. It may not be pretty at times, but you will see the effort that we put in, and we gave it everything. And so, that's what it was. First, it was about learning to compete and building the key roles in the team. And I remember Hong Kong, first ever motor race, literally in the streets of Hong Kong. And that was, we'd had virtually, such a tight and steep ramp, I should say, into the start of that year. And we turned up at that first race, and we weren't in the most prepared way because we just didn't have time. But we had to take that opportunity at that point, and we together as a group, we built and we learned. And like I said, a lot of that team are here today, including one of our racing drivers, which is fantastic. And we just, that first year, our best result was a 4th place. We talked a lot about learning in every race, but that's true. We're just gathering information, understanding the formula in more detail, learning to race, quite frankly, again, in this new category. And I think what I love, I've got a slide that I show internally, which is the first year and our best being 4th. And every single year, this team has scored more points. Got to the point we started scoring podiums. Our first win in 2019 was a win, our first podium was a win, which is great. And the trajectory has only been up, and that's what's been exciting about this journey.
It's really great to hear that JLR was supportive of the team going through that learning difficult phase. I mean, obviously, there's all the talk at the moment about how Red Bull have dropped Lawson after 2 races and not giving him an opportunity to learn. Renault, very famously, kind of doesn't really care about Formula One, and really only races because a couple of marketing people say that they should. I mean, even Mercedes, are a bit sort of about the Formula One team, and I think are always trying to find excuses to put less money into it. And so it's always really nice to hear that the wider brand is supportive of the race team, and is JLR still owned by Tata?
Correct.
As well. So they were supportive as well. Nobody at Tata going, who's this Nicholas Cassidy we're paying so much money to?
No, listen, we are in an amazing company. JLR is doing incredible things. We have an amazing house of brands with phenomenal products and brands. So firstly, the company is incredible. We have an amazing board of management that are hugely passionate about the company and are huge supporters of our race program. And that's, of course, over the years, that's built. We started out with support, but that has only got stronger over the years. And we see racing as not just an activity to promote the Jaguar brand. It brings technology transfer into the company. It is a massive way of motivating our employees, over 44,000 employees now around the world. We are the best example of winning mindsets, and with the right people, the right budget, the right resources, and the right support, that we as a company can achieve anything. And so we're a great proof point of that. So for us, the race program represents many things, and the board are so supportive of that. And for sure, a career highlight I'll never forget is we brought the World Championship trophy home to Gaydon. In the UK, we had nearly 3,500 of our employees turn out to see the team bring the trophy home. We had our chairman of Tata Sons there to see us do that, and that was a real honour. And our CEO of JLR, Adrian Mardell, was there to absolutely kind of hold that trophy aloft with myself and the chairman and the rest of the team. And that support is very rare, as you say, but it's testament to the culture and the board of management and the people we have in JLR, that we have that much support, which is great. And support is earned. As a team, we have shown how dedicated we are. We've delivered on our commitments around constantly improving in performance. but they also understand that you can't win everything. And if you look at the greatest sports people in history, I think Tiger Woods won 24% of his professional PGA Tour events, and you
And
could
that's a lot.
say by any measure that doesn't sound that good, but you and I both think that's incredible. That's incredible. So if you understand sports and you understand that if it was easy, anyone would do it, and that's what that's what the company understands. It's not easy. Not everyone does it, but those who do it, that's brave, that's bold, that needs support, and ultimately that's part of the journey. That's what makes sport exciting. That's what creates the passion. It's how you react in difficult times, how you learn from that, it's how you demonstrate good culture in those moments. And then when you do spray champagne, those are the special moments where you can see the effort paying off and that culture and that mindset paying off. So yeah, it's a brilliant company that's doing great things, and the racing team is a part of that, which I'm really proud of.
You mentioned a few of the people who had been with you since season 1. Obviously, the main one is Mitch Evans. How is having a driver be so loyal, I guess, to the team? And well, first of all, how important is that loyalty? And secondly, how does that impact your sort of development as a team?
Yeah, well, firstly, we sit here with two incredible drivers now in Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy, and I'll come to Nick in a minute. But on your question about Mitch, yeah, it's been an incredible journey. There's not many in racing that have been this long, and it's very special. This program is one of Jaguar's, if not Jaguar's, most successful race program in history, which is amazing. You think of the number of points, podiums, and wins we've had, and a world championship. And Mitch is now firmly cemented in one of the most successful Jaguar racing drivers of all time. When you consider that his peers, Sterling Moss and many others, which are great to the sport, I'm really proud for him for that. But it was a great, at the start of our journey, if I kind of wind back the clock, we were a brand new team. We needed a driver that was going to come on that journey with us. To get a seasoned professional world championship contending driver wasn't viable, because they want to win championships and we weren't at that point. So Mitch joined us at the beginning as well, and as we evolved, he evolved, and I saw him coming in as a fresh face F2 driver with success. For some reason, maybe, and I would say unfairly, hadn't had the opportunity in F1. We looked at it as a positive and said, let's nurture him and make him great here. And
absolutely,
and that's been that journey, seeing Mitch become an incredibly rounded athlete, human being, and racing driver has been very special. And he's incredibly strong now, incredibly effective, and just an absolute world-class professional. And he's fought for the championship every year for the last 5 years now, pretty much, which is phenomenal. So yeah, that loyalty, we've repaid in him and he's repaid in us. And I think that we have been through highs and lows together, lots of them. But I think what's been great is Mitch has always believed in the journey that we've been on, believed in the team and I, and that's paid off for him as well, being in a position to be one of the very few drivers that can say they genuinely fought for the championship every year over these last 5 years.
Slightly more left field question about Mitch. Is he the unluckiest driver you've ever worked with? Because we keep joking about his bad luck of missing out on titles through stuff that's really out of his control. But it's not even just in Formula E. Like, when I was preparing for this interview, I was looking back at some of his GP2 stuff, and some of the stuff that happened to him in GP2 as well, like the headrest flying out of the car at Silverstone one year. So I don't know if he walked under some ladders, knocked over some salt, and lived with 14 black cats when he was growing up.
Yeah, listen, it's tough. Eh? Our game is not easy. Our game is not easy, and sometimes you are in control of things, sometimes you aren't in control of them. And yeah, I think he's had his fair share, but I think a lot of racing drivers can say the same, if I'm really honest. But if I look back, there's been times when he has he's been purely unlucky. There's been times when we've let him down, and that happens, right? When you're in a partnership together, sometimes you make mistakes, sometimes the team make mistakes, but he's been phenomenal. And yeah, he should have won a world championship by now. There's moments where I could look back and say, go back to that Berlin moment on the grid when we had a silicon carbide module fail on the grid, and that is really, really tough. But then the fact that we had pushed the boundaries of technology, we were one of the first teams to use that technology in Formula E. If we hadn't done, then he probably wouldn't have been in a position to fight for the championship. And I think Mitch has always understood that with us, is that, as we pioneered, as we pushed it, put him into a competitive situation, But it will come for him. It will come for him. There's no doubt about that. You can't. I think you can't keep being at that top level without it happening for you eventually. But you look at it, take away a championship, and yes, of course, it's nice to have those championships. But if you look at pure success, he's equally the most successful driver in Formula E now, along with Lucas and with Seb, and that's the most. I think that's that's the most important. In his time here, and he's been here a couple of years less than those guys, and he was already equal. So I like to think he's going to pass them, and then the true fact is he would have hopefully won more races than anyone else in Formula E in history, and I think that's testament to Mitch's ability.
Can you just say what that technical issue was on the grid in Berlin again?
Yeah, we had a module fail inside the inverter, the silicon carbide module that basically allows us to take energy from the battery in direct current, and you put it into alternating current to go to the inverter and basically turn the wheels, in essence. It was a breakthrough technology in 2017. We were one of the first to use it. It got us to a point to fight for a championship. But yeah, when you pioneer with technology, you sometimes fail fast, you learn. And we learned that day. But ultimately, you have to pioneer in a game like this to be at the front end, and that comes with its penalties and its pains sometimes. You look through the history of motorsport, and those teams that pioneered have had those moments because they're pushing to get to the front.
Well, the good news is Mitch managed to use up all of his good luck at the first round of this season in Sao Paulo as well, coming from last to first. With that technology that you were mentioning there, and I guess this question goes beyond just the sort of technology and more of a team-wide thing, but how do you evaluate what is working, what isn't working, what needs changing, and how to change it?
Yeah, it's never ending is a reality. The sport is constantly evolving, the technology is constantly evolving. So we always look at it through the lens of where are we going to get our overall best performance, and it's not one silver bullet. It's a combination of factors. Firstly, it's the car design. You'd have to optimize the car design. You've got to race that car for 2 years. So first things first is every 2 years making sure you have the best package for to be competitive over those 2 years. It's about the racing operations and the strategy side of things, and where you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck. And then it's on the people in the right roles doing the right job, and all that's constantly changing. So it's really there's never one thing, but we're kind of constantly evaluating where we put our investments. And now we have technical, sporting, and financial regulations. It's not just making sure you are absolutely optimizing the technical regulations or the sporting regulations. You now have to make sure you're spending your money in the best way. So yes, it's a combination of factors now, and that's what makes it about a really effective business as a racing team as well to achieve results on track. I always say everyone has a role to play in making this team fast. Doesn't matter what their role is, right? Because genuinely, everyone has a role to play to make sure the team is effective and efficient. And if someone is making that, if there's a process or a weakness in the team, it ultimately comes down to making the team slower or less effective in some way, shape, or form.
John, I think I was transcribing an interview with Andy Cowell after Mercedes had won their 5th Formula One title in a row or something, and he said, it's all the way down to like the catering and creating the space. Like, can we provide them with like free snacks and free drinks in the factory and things like that? So I guess people don't often realize it's not just what you do with the mechanics or the engineers. It has to go down to the deepest level. Completely,
yeah. It's the whole thing has to be working harmoniously. If you have a stone in your shoe somewhere, it's going to eventually create a blister. And so you're always trying to avoid anything that is going to create that effect.
With obviously having just won the title, but having fought for many titles, basically since 2019, you've been fighting for the title every single year. What was missing in those first few years that you then had last year when you managed to win the team's championship?
Yeah, again, a really good question, but not an easy answer, because a lot of things, if I kind of go back to first year, 2016, like I said, just learning to compete, the car wasn't fast enough, it was too heavy, it wasn't efficient enough, our racing operations weren't really where they needed to be. Year 2, we got better, and straight away we came out the box. We were better in Hong Kong, and we were there already, kind of starting to get closer to the podium, and that was by turning up with a better car, a more efficient car which was more capable. And at that time, it was a car which was better in qualifying, but we struggled a bit in efficiency in the race. So we're still getting understanding our know-how. And Formula E, there's a lot around the software side, and that was a big area where we really need to improve on the software and the control side. As I kind of go through each year, we just refine these elements. And then really kind of 2019 being that year, which was the breakthrough year, our first win. And it was, at that point, we had a car which was now fast in qualifying, fast in the race. If I rewind actually a little bit, Mitch's first pole position was in Zurich, and we got the car to a point where it could be really quick in quali. But actually, we didn't have the efficiency. So that was, now you're like, okay, we've got that bit right. Now, how do we keep that bit, but focus on the areas we need to improve? So those days I talk about kind of, we learn a lot when we lose, sometimes more when we lose. Those are great examples where you say, okay, we understand the recipe to make the car faster over a lap, but now how do we make the car faster over a race? And what can we do with our operations to improve? So each year it was about refining that. Never one silver bullet again. And by the time we turned up in 2019, we had a car which we knew we could qualify well with. And Mitch also qualified in the front row in Rome, and then had that incredible race with Andre Lotterer in the Tech Cheetah, which was very, very competitive at that time with the Stellantis powertrain. So yeah, it was that point where you say the tide turned. We went on to an exciting rest of the year with podiums in places like Bern. What an incredible track that was, by the way. That was
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
It was an amazing track.
Really good.
Yeah, it was an incredible place. So amazing tracks, and we had a really fantastic end to that year. And during the course of that, you'd seen Mitch and learned a lot from teammates he had, from Nelson Piquet Jr. I remember Mitch came from the back in Morocco to nearly get onto the podium. And so all the time you're building your skill set, you're building your strength, both team, driver, and then by the time we turned up in 2020, we had that difficult COVID year, which was really tough for everybody. So that's almost a year which seemed to fly by, but that was the year we just missed out. We learned a lot, and we had a car which was fast. In fact, that's an interesting year. It's worth touching on that. We designed a car which we thought we really nailed it, right? We've got a good plan. It's going to work across a variety of circuits we race on. And then, of course, COVID hit, and we had nearly a third of the championship in one location in Berlin, which we hadn't designed the car for. We designed it for a combination of tracks. So that really hurt us. I think that year we would have fought for a championship, but unfortunately, COVID happened, and there were far bigger things to worry about. So, but then 21 came around, and that was the year I think we really showed our strength. And as you say, ever since then, we fought for a championship every single year, and it's been great to see that change. But then we had dynamically, from a car point of view, we were strong. Powertrain efficiency-wise, we were strong. Racing drivers strong, team strong, and we were able to really start competing.
In terms of the drivers in the car as well, being teammates to Mitch Evans, there seemed to be quite a bit of progression there as well. It seemed like each one seemed to get like better and better, and would challenge Mitch a little bit more, to the point where Nick was able to come in and be his equal straight away, it seemed like, which I found particularly impressive. And it seems like every team principal's dream to have two really great drivers. But as we've seen in racing around the world throughout the years, they can be at loggerheads sometimes. So how do you manage having two primo drivers that are capable of fighting for the world championship and want to fight each other for it as well?
Yeah, so I think first things first, every driver that's been in the team alongside Mitch has brought something to us, which I'm really grateful for. They've all allowed us to learn, and they've all made us stronger in their own right. So, very respectful to every single one of them, the role they've played. But as you said, on raw performance, it was hard to find someone who, race in, race out, would match Mitch on pace. And it was pretty clear that when Nick first came into Formula E, I followed his career closely in Japan. What an incredible career there, winning the three titles, which very, very few people ever do, right, in Japan, without having a lot of history on those racetracks. Straight in,
so specialist,
and just phenomenal. So I was a big fan of his straight away from them. Watching him coming to Formula E as he learned the category. It's a very tricky category to learn, and every racing driver in Formula E will tell you that. And those who aren't in Formula E will tell you why some don't even want to come, because they just know you can make you look very average very quickly. But straight away, I remember there was telltale signs. Nick in Valencia in the rain, he was on a quali lap, and he was so fast. He was nearly a second up on everybody, and then he made a little mistake in the final couple of corners. But I kind of logged that in my head, and I said, okay, here's someone who is at another level, and we need to, at the right point, have him in the team. So yeah, when we had the opportunity to have Nick join us, he came to us and expressed a real interest to join us. We were, very happy with that, and he's a phenomenally competitive, technically very astute racing driver, and yeah, he's brought a lot to us. And yeah, I always say I'd rather have two drivers absolutely pushing for wins, because that's what enabled us to win a Teams World Championship last year. That's what stopped us winning a Teams World Championship sooner, if I'm honest. And knowing that if one of your drivers, if the car is right, will be in a position to win a race is a much better feeling than not being certain of that. So yeah, from my point of view, it's a positive. Yes, it comes with management, because they're both incredibly competitive athletes, but it's about respect. It's about being transparent. It's about us listening to them when they've got things to input, and it's also about us, making sure that we all understand we race for Jaguar. We're here because we are all employed by the team, and we respect this incredible team and incredible brand. So it's about having that mutual respect. And with Nick and Mitch, they absolutely have that. They've grown up racing go-karts since the age of 6-7 years old. They've been racing. I mean, what an amazing journey. Imagine racing or playing football with a mate at 67 years old, and you find yourself now as two professionals in a world-class team in a world championship. I mean, it's they do pinch themselves about that, I know, from time to time. But yeah, they're very competitive. But away from the track, they're good friends. They got a whole day together, and that helps. So there's a mutual respect there. They do care about each other behind it. And that's probably one difference. If you have two lions who don't really give a damn about each other away, I think that's different. But we have two racing drivers who equally are competitive for their own reason and for the team. But at the end of the day, they respect each other.
I guess for every tantrum a driver might have about, whatever order they're sent out in qualifying or being put on a different setup or something like this, anything that a racing driver can complain about, right? For every one of those, you end up with a race like Monaco the other year, which was some of the most beautifully coordinated and executed team play I think Formula E has ever seen.
Yeah, that was a very special day. But you need everyone to, you need everything to work in harmony. That's a great example where, that day the racing drivers worked in harmony. And to be fair to Nick, that day he really, he made the call and said, this one's for Mitch, and so that is teamwork at its absolute finest. When you have a racing driver who a chance to win Monaco and fight for Monaco win, says actually I get it for the team. This is a rare chance for a 1-2, the first ever 1-2 in Formula E in Monaco, and there's not many 1-2 in the history of races in Monaco. So that's just an example of being a great teammate as well. And and that was a very special day. Mitch had come so close to winning Monaco before. We'd had a third, a second, and we just needed that one last step on the podium. So to do it and do it consecutively, it was I think I'm trying to remind myself, you were third, we were second, and then we were first. That was very, very special. And to do a 1-2 is a moment I'll never forget.
Was it the Da Costa win that Mitch lost when Da Costa?
Yeah, we went from the lead to third in the last half of the lap. But
yes,
I mean my heart rate took a few days to come down off the back of that. But listen, that was
a
great race, but a great example. Mitch saw the opportunity to get the race lead and took the view to say, listen, if I can get it, hopefully I can hold it to the end. But he'd had a bit more work to do than the others to get to that point, and he used a bit more energy to get to the lead, and we hoped he could hold on. And I know he definitely gave it his best shot, but Antonio with a bit more energy pipped us, which is a shame.
James, we've spoken so much about how you've managed to take this team from just an idea, bring a massive brand back to global motorsport. If you could summarize the qualities that a successful race team needs to have, what elements would you choose there?
I think firstly is stability, and knowing that there's a long-term vision is first, right? That's the first point. People need a North Star. They need to have that clear purpose. And so that's really first important, the stability and a clear purpose to the team. Second point is I always say this, we can have the best the best people we can have, all the money in the world, but if we don't have the right culture, it's the foundation of a team. So that ability to, in difficult times, learn from that and not argue and not fight, and in successful times, celebrate well together. So the culture is the bedrock of any team. But then it's about having world-class people, the right resources to go and make the most of that culture and that mindset. So those are the key things for me. And I guess ultimately at the end of the day is passion. Like, you have to have a group of people who want to do this. Either I say, be a tap, not a drain. And that's because you need to be adding things in, not taking things away. You've got to constantly adding. And if you have those ingredients, it's not if, it's just when.
Well, James, I'm sure you've got plenty of preparations ahead of you for Miami, and we've just thank you coming in for and chatting about this team. It's been absolutely fascinating, and we wish you all the best for the rest of the season.
No, thanks. It's been a privilege joining you, and hope to see you soon.
Well, dear listeners, as we said, Miami E-Prix is coming up this Saturday, so make sure you tune in. It'll be Christina back to host the race review. That'll come out on the same day as the E-Prix. As always, in the meantime, be sure to check out the Formula One show. Obviously, we've just had the Japanese Grand Prix. Not for us, though. This is actually before the Japanese Grand Prix, but by the time this comes out, the Japanese Grand Prix will have happened. Hope it was a good one, or nasty crash. Terrible for Hamilton, right? Can't believe Hamilton won his first race. I think we've covered all the bases there. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you at the next one.